Okay, 1 second. We'll make sure everything's set up. Always a bit of a challenge when we do that. All right, excellent. All right, good evening, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving, or just past Thanksgiving. Much appreciated you joining me live. Always a pleasure to do live sessions. I really enjoy them, both sharing and obviously, or not obviously, my favorite part is actually your questions and what I like to call Q&C, not Q&A, questions and conversation. So we can open it up to, at the end, we'll open it up to more topics or more discussion around real estate um, towards the end. I apologize if my voice is a bit hoarse. I have been on the phone a lot this past week. Just today, I think I probably spent well over 5 hours just speaking on the phone with different teams and clients and conversations, all good ones. So I definitely enjoy that. So I do apologize if the voice is a little bit off tonight, and I definitely need some rest. Um, I want to just mention that first of all, those of you who are watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. I do hope you will join us in the future for the live sessions, which are more beneficial, in my opinion. For those of you on the live session, if you have a question, you want to make a comment while I speak, by all means, do so. I'll be happy to engage in conversation with you as I present or as I go through everything. We don't have to necessarily wait for the Q&C session at the end. That being said, let's get started. I want to introduce myself. My name is Dani Beit-Or. I'm a real estate investor, and I've been helping others to buy long-term, primarily long-term rentals for about 21 years now. I've been an investor myself more than 21 years. I live in Orange County, California. I lived up in the Bay Area for 10 years before moving down here about 10 years ago. All I've done in the past 20 years is be in real estate, invest in real estate, help others invest in real estate, 100% out of state. So I'm not very good with doing local real estate, but more focused on doing out of state. With a lot of experience of doing it over the years, I've helped clients buy over 5,000 properties in more than 40 real estate markets. Primarily, most of my experience and focus has been residential long-term investing or residential properties. I did some, I've done other things like commercial a little bit and tax liens and, in land. I've done those a little bit. I flipped about 100 houses up until a few years ago, but for the most part, my experience has really been in the residential long-term rentals, single families, duplexes, fourplexes in all those metros that I'm mentioning here and few more. Just to give you a little bit of kind of the background in something more visual, what you can see here is everywhere you see a red or blue dot or mark or pin on the map, it's actually an actual property owned by one of our clients or by myself. Blue dot is actually properties we flipped. So red is rental, blue is flipping, and where you can see most of our clients are coming from. So about 90% of our clients are people who live on the west coast of the US, anywhere from San Diego to Seattle, and few others are coming from Europe and New York and Boston. So really a good mix of places around the country, but definitely the majority is the west coast. I'm going to skip that warning. I just want to mention that we, we have a lot of content online through the different channels or social media channels. I do want to emphasize maybe three things really worth knowing among all the other ones is that we started a Facebook group to have a place where we can continue the conversation, right? Specific things. I just uploaded a really short article about a twist or an interesting twist, how to use 1031 exchange with a combination of your primary residence should you own a property that have accumulated a significant value, or it appreciated a lot more than you can use the exemption of 250,000 a person. So if you want to kind of read my idea, how to go about it, you can go to this Facebook group and continue the conversation on this one and other things. Our almost everything, I would say everything that I do content-wise goes to our YouTube channel that has more than 400 educational, similar to this evening videos, and well over 200 episodes on our podcast. So you're most welcome to consume more knowledge, more experience about real estate. I try to really teach my style, and tonight as well is teaching, sharing, educating. I'm not really good with sales pitching in those seminars or webinars. By the way, if anybody here tonight expecting some selling of a product or a course or something like that towards the end, you're in for a disappointment. I do have a little gift that I want to share with you, free, but not more than that. So um, um, there is no actual sales pitch towards the end, no special discount at the end because I'm not selling anything. Just want you to know, yes, I will share the Facebook link later on when we get to the Q&C. By the way, if you just want to look it up on Facebook, the name of the group is Property Owners Get Rich in their sleep, right? That's the name, the most creative name we came up with. And yes, John, nothing for 1997 tonight only. And if you bring a friend, they come for free. Ain't gonna happen towards the end. Just want to know if you're expecting it. My apologies. We do accept credit cards. If you have to pay something tonight, we'll be gladly sell you something for free. Sorry, something that doesn't, that we, yeah, one of our free items, you can definitely purchase them if you want. Okay, let's move on. Now that we went through some of the house cleaning items, and hopefully we get our, okay. I am excited to share with you that for the first time, I decided to do a really different type of an event. And that's coming up in January 22nd. January 22nd, I'm hosting a more of a peer review collaborative session, not me coming and talking about anything. The whole idea of this event that we're doing it for the first time is to have, give the stage, the mic to you guys and have someone come in, one of you maybe, right, at no cost, and kind of pitch to the group an investment you are considering doing. Pitch, not looking for investors. Don't bring your deal and look for investors within the group. The idea is, hey, I'm about to make this investment and I would love to hear what the group has to say. That's why we call it a peer review. The whole point is if someone wants to present a deal, they are considering and want a feedback from others. That would be an opportunity to kind of make sure, ask questions. Did you miss anything? Maybe look into this. Maybe there is a specific question you have in mind and you're not sure how to tackle. That would be an opportunity to kind of pose that question to the group and get feedback, specific, general, etc. So if you want to present your deal that you are considering doing, this is an opportunity for you. Again, not to sell to the group. If you are someone who's actually not looking at a specific deal or do not feel comfortable presenting to the group a specific deal, but you want to sit on and either contribute from your knowledge or hear what others are saying, about the discussion, you are most welcome to participate and hear and listen and learn by learning by listening or learning by participating as part of the group. So we have two type of people here, a participant or an active participant. I'm hoping for you to bring your common sense and questions into this. And also, obviously, the one person that will present, that's coming up on the 22nd of January. You're most welcome to reach out to us if you want to present, and of course, register for free on our webpage. For this one, it's simply doit.net/events reg. I will try to put all the link later on so we can you can have them in front of you. Okay, I will give you three gifts that we share with people. An ebook that I've put together that really outlines a lot about investing, a list of resources. I think there's like 90 different resources. Some of them you may are already familiar with. Some of them are things that you're probably not familiar, to help you be a more knowledgeable, experienced investor, to navigate your investment, real estate investing life, and a list of curated videos that we put together that I believe, or me and my team kind of think those are the top ones among the ones that we've done over the years that could benefit you as investors. Okay, let me tell you just in short how I came up with the topic and the details for tonight. Well, the way I came up with it is, when we meet with a new potential client, we ask them to complete what we called an intake form. The intake form asks them few questions, concerns, etc. And then we have thousands of lines of this intake form. I can always look back and I say, okay, what people are asking, what questions are coming up, what concerns are coming up. And that helps us to kind of say, hey, those are the main things that I'm seeing nowadays. How about we tackle them? Instead of me guessing, let me listen to you guys. And based on that, I want to kind of tackle those points and touch on some of those main concerns, right? The whole point is the main concerns. All right, let's start then. Um, First one is, always comes around, I don't want to be in a situation where I lose money, right? Lose money financially on the monthly basis. Most of the people, when I talked about loss or financial loss, they really mean financial loss. The main concern is not if the cash flow is not, it's not the cash flow as much as I bought at some point and the market tanked or went down. By the way, I've been in that situation through the crash of 2008. I forgot to mention that I did go through the crash of 2008 big time, right? So I've been through the crash on the personal level, on a professional level, with many clients. So that taught me a lot. So I want to kind of try and make sense regarding this financial loss and tell you how you can, or how we go about mitigating the decision process in order to reduce the chances of making a bad investment. Okay, and how do I look at this decision process or making a decision regarding an investment property, and in order to reduce the chances, right? No guarantees, reduce the chances of making bad decision or ending up with a bad piece of property. So a couple of things. First of all, what I want to say, and you're maybe looking at this list down here, but I just want to mention that the way I look at our decision process when we are, buying an investment or considering an investment property, is it's almost like the decision itself, not the property, the decision itself, it's like a platform, right? And that the decision platform sits on multiple pillars. Each one of those pillars is one aspect or one important aspect of the transaction, right? So for example, my decision platform sits on pillar number one, is what the rent would be. Pillar number two, what do I know about the appreciation of the market? Pillar number three, what I analyze and anticipate the cash flow would be. Pillar number four, who is my local team? Realtor-wise, what's their experience? What do they know, etc. Property management is another pillar. Where I'm buying, the metro that I'm buying, and the market segment, those are all pillars, and so on, right? So there's multiple factors that I consider each one of them a pillar supporting my decision platform, right? Now, let's just say all of those, there's many more factors. I'm just using a bunch of them. The point that I'm trying to make is, I see every one of those pillars are as important, but not necessarily critical important, but not insignificant. And why am I saying it's not critical and it's not insignificant, just important decision, is because when I have a platform supported by, let's just say, 20 such pillars or 25 such decision pillars, Let's assume that out of those 25 decision pillars, we don't know the futures. Not all of them are going to materialize the way we anticipated when we made the decision. Okay, so for example, let's just say the rent, and as a result, the cash flow is $300. You know what? $400 less than what I anticipated, right? So all of a sudden, I'm looking at my property after I purchase it, and I see that what I was anticipating, one or two of my pillars did not, did not materialize exactly or similarly to what I was planning. What just happened? Two of the pillars out of the 20 or 25 pillars, decision pillars that I have, did not materialize, and they are not supporting my decision platform so well anymore. Is that so bad? Well, the answer is probably not, because let's just say two or three or four of the decision pillars did not materialize well. I still have 16 on other, 15 other pillars supporting the decision, right? So what I'm trying to emphasize is, don't try to make the decision on a property, or on a specific property based on one aspect. There are multiple major aspects, minor aspects, all of them supporting my decision. And even if two of them, let's just say two of them, are not supporting it, they're not supporting anymore, things do not crash, because I have other decisions that I made that are still holding, my decision, right? Are supporting my decision. Now, by the way, even when those two pillars did not, pan out as I was planning, that does not mean they completely crashed, right? It's not like I was thinking, oh my God, I was planning for a $2,000 a month rent, and I ended up with $500 a month rent. I was planning for 2,000, something happened, whatever, this is really a harsh situation, and now I'm settling on 1,600. So it's not, my entire decision did not crash, it's just not materialized as we speak. The point I'm trying to make, remember, it's multiple decisions. Each one of those decision pillars, or contributing pillars, has an importance. Maybe some are more than others, but none of them are going to be the sole one. None of them are going to be, the individual that determines, right? For the most part, usually those things, do not happen. So that means even if you made a mistake on one or two or three, or did not, things did not turn out as you were thinking, things are still probably going to be okay, assuming you didn't neglect or you didn't make poor decision on all of them, right? So even if you did not perfect all of them, things are still supported. It's still not necessarily going to be a bad decision. It just means part of it did not pan out as you were planning on, right? So it's important to remember that when we are making a decision. Second point I've been running into many times has to do with the vacancy, right? And vacancy, especially vacancy when we are dealing with the turn from the current tenant to the next tenant. And one of the people here tonight and I had a very long conversation about this point earlier today, and I want to say the following. So for many years, my business model, our investment model is, we work with property managers on the local market. Property managers do the ongoing management, and they're also doing the leasing aspect, or the leasing facet of the investment. I'm talking about traditional long-term rentals. Usually property managers, the way they operate when it comes to turning one tenant to another, they wait for the current tenant to move out, they go to the property, and then they inspect it. They then decide if they have to bring the general contractor in, and then, or someone else, or a handyman. Then they come up with a bid. They go to the owner. They say, here's what needs to be done, waiting for the owner to approve. Now waiting for the handyman or whoever to come in, do the work, then finish the work, take photos if needed, put it on the market, and wait for the next tenant to come in. This is almost the standard property management method, which I've been accustomed to, and I don't really like it. I've never liked it, but as I can share with you, all the property managers we work with, and we are considered their biggest account. And so I carry weight when I talk to those property managers, with all those relationships that I have with them for many, many years, hundreds of properties. They listen to me or they converse with me. But there's one thing that they never willing to change, and that's how the listing process works. This is how they work. It's a series. It's one step after another. Get it out, get the tenant out, check the property, get the handyman or contractor, get it approved, get the bid, get it approved, send the person over, do the work, and so on, right? Step one, step two, step three, etc. It's always one after another. It's and that what that causes, it's a lot of inefficiency. And when I mean inefficiency, sometimes just to get to the point that we have a bid in our hand, and I'm not talking about if nothing is needed, but even small stuff, just to get to the point that there's bid in my hand from the contractor or handyman can easily take a week to 10 days, right? And no property manager will be at the property the day after the tenant moves out. No handyman or contractor will be there the day or 2 or 3 after the tenant moved out. It takes them time to review, to put the bid together, etc. So we lose a lot of vacancy days on administrative inefficiencies, and I think it's just hurting us. Obviously, first, the property is not generating. Second, during that time, we tend to pay for the utilities and carry all those costs, etc. So there's actual cost to those days, and plus we are losing valuable marketing time until they actually put the property on the market and then start showing it to potential tenants. Sometimes this process takes longer than a month or even month and a half and 2, right? Maybe for good reasons, maybe many times not really for good reasons, right? So for well over 15 years, I've been trying to challenge all the property managers I work with to change this method. They are always resisting across the board. They fight me on this one all the time. And I decided I need to do something about it. And we kind of branched out and decided to start doing property management, not do property management ourselves, but create an ecosystem that some of our owners can self-manage their properties. And in that ecosystem, I completely re-engineered and came up with a new methodology, how the leasing process needs to look like. And in my process, the way I look at it, we are doing a lot. Not only that we're doing a lot of those items or tasks in parallel, we're actually starting to do it before the current tenant moves out, right? So there's multiple tasks we're doing before the current tenant moves out. We're gonna also evaluate what kind of a situation this property in, because sometimes, and when I argue with the property managers about this, and they say, hey, many times we cannot do anything to the property until the tenant moves out because there's a lot of work and we're not going to be able to see because they're messy. And they're absolutely right, and I don't dispute that whatsoever. My only dispute with them when they are saying, hey, here's the example how things are really happen, I always tell them, listen, you're absolutely right. Probably 20% of the time, maybe 30% of the time. Hey, 40% of the time, we have to wait for the tenant to move out, and only then we can do the things that you tell us you do one step at a time. I get it. What about the other 50, 60, 70% of the times that you don't have to wait for the tenant to move out, right? You want to tell me that 100% of the time you have to wait for the tenant to move out? I know personally that's not the case, right? So in those cases, we completely re-engineer the process in a way that a lot of those tasks are going to be done in parallel at the same time. A lot of those tasks are now put back into even taking care of them as much as possible, at least some of them, while there's still a tenant inside the house. So much so, we are trying to work with the tenants that we can show the property while they're still in the house. Again, if possible, it's not always possible. By doing so, we are reducing dramatically the lead time, the marketing time to have a new tenant in, right? So all it needed is, Here's how things are done. And I wanted to challenge this. And when we do the self-management, and I can elaborate on that if you want later, the self-managed, the owner-managed ecosystem, we are doing things completely differently, reducing the vacancy, increasing the efficiency, and many times we even position the house and letting potential tenants know that the house is not ready. It's gonna be, it's gonna be painted. So what you're seeing right now, Mr. Potential Tenant, while the current tenant is still inside, is not what you're gonna get until the current tenant moves out. We're gonna take a week and we're gonna paint and fresh and do whatever is necessary. We already have everything ready. We are just waiting for that tenant to move out. You can definitely sign a lease, but it has to be, at least a week or 10 days after the current tenant moves out, because we want to make sure when you move in, we clean the house, we fix whatever is necessary, we took the time, but we're not losing valuable time over waiting for someone to do the walkthrough, waiting for someone to do the bid, etc. That is a significant loss of time when we're dealing with rental properties, and they cost us money. So if you are an active real estate investor, and by the way, always a pleasure if you are contributing to the conversation, and if you can just say, hey, I'm an active investor, I'm a beginner, I've never invested, whatever, in the chat, that would be nice for me to know who's here, right? So you can definitely answer or respond in the chat. But if you are an active investor, you know what I'm talking about. You're probably familiar with that inefficiency between tenants. And if you are a what I call an extreme owner, right? Someone who's really taking charge on your own property, you will challenge your property manager or whoever you work with to not fall into this pattern. I have to admit, I don't fall into this pattern. I'm just losing the battles with those property managers, and I have not given up, fighting them on that. Luckily, we're all in good relationship, and it's always a healthy conversation, but I'm still unhappy with the results. Okay, the next point that comes up many, many times is, how do I make sure I do not, or how do I reduce the chance of having a problematic tenant? Now, I'm going to give you a simple answer that for me, it's very obvious, very trivial, because this is just how we operate. But when I talk to people over time, I guess that's not always the case, right? So maybe it's obvious to me, but not so obvious. So the most obvious solution is, first of all, always do a background check, you or the professional you're working with. Credit check, background check, whatever is allowed to do. It's not that expensive. There are a lot of tools out there. It's very, people tend to not, they don't necessarily lie, but maybe they minimize something, or they forgot to say something, whatever. So that is an opportunity to get more transparency on who's coming to your house and avoid issues, problems, etc. So the first easy tool that at your disposal, you or through the person you're working with, is to run background check, application, background check, credit check, whatever. Second thing is, try to speak, you or someone on your behalf. I would say 2, ideally 3 owners, from the history, and not the last one. The last one may be incentivized to actually tell you how the tenant is great, so he can get rid of that problem he's having and send it off to you. So for me, the last one is not usually ideal. The 2 or 3 before that, absolutely, much better. Be aware that more and more, there's a couple of things that I'm hearing just throughout the past year that I've never ran into them, and I would suggest to really avoid using them or be aware they're around. First of all, fake documents, right? And I'm not talking about AI fake or maybe AI generated, but people are generating fake W-2s. So be aware that's happening. I do see fake or very generic, um, not sorry, support animal, emotional support animal certification. I have seen letters that are not official certification letters, but more of a generic, this is my support animal. People use it either for to get away from the additional rent and or security deposit or pet deposit and or getting declined, because a support animal, support pet has a different status in most places. So they are not even considered a dog or a pet, they're considered support. So in many states you cannot deny just based on that. So those letters are not necessarily authentic. It's really worth looking into. The last thing that I've seen very few times, but more than once, is people paying security deposit and rent using debit card or credit card. And many property managers are, if you're using a property manager, are enabling this. And here is what's the problem with the credit card and the debit card. It's called chargebacks. The tenant calls the credit card company, and they are opening a dispute, and they're getting their money back, and you're gonna be paying for it because it's a chargeback, right? So first of all, the credit card companies are believing the user, right? And then we can fight it, and we can file a lawsuit, and we can dispute it with the fraud department and of the credit card, etc. You know what? How about this? If I told all the property managers I work with, I don't want you to get to use debit card and credit cards on security deposits or rent, right? Paying for application fee, okay, that's not a problem. But paying for those things, they can. I have seen 3 cases of a chargeback. It will probably get resolved eventually, but it's gonna be an agonizing process of multiple months and frustration. And if you're an owner and that happens, you immediately blame the property manager, although the property manager did everything they should and could, fair and square. They didn't do anything wrong, but still happened. So if you can avoid it, you may not run into this problem to begin with, right? Luckily for us, if you're a tenant, you can pay by check, e-check, ACH many times, direct deposit, wire, Zelle, Venmo, maybe even PayPal, right? Cash App, I don't know. There's multiple ways to pay. And for the most part, even just if it really comes down to it, an old school paper check in the mail works, right? Still works. So just be aware of that. There are multiple ways tenants can pay. It's not like we're taking the credit card out of the way and they are having problems how to pay us. So we talked about avoiding issues. I kind of went into those payment methods, but it really starts with processing them or running application properly and fully, right? Checking on them properly. That's really, really an amazing, powerful way to eliminate problems. And then I have to say that I have another layer that I like to use, and that's called going to certain parts of the metro, certain neighborhood, targeting certain type of renters. Just by going to certain segments of the metro, it is very likely you will naturally eliminate some of the problematic ones, right? So if you are in an area that the types of tenants are really going to have a hard time paying the rent, guess what? You will very likely have problems with rent or tenants not paying, evictions, etc. But if you are in areas that the rent you're asking fits into the rent and the tenant, there's a lower chance of them running into problem paying the rent. That already helps with that situation. So just by going to certain parts of the metro, investing in certain areas, it's already a kind of a way to eliminate problems. about maybe 2 years ago, I did a podcast with one of our property managers, and you can see it at the bottom here, and the link for it. It's called Tenant Screening and Evictions. And I asked that property manager to do the following. I said, "Don't let's not talk on the what happens on the day to day with tenants. I want to talk about vetting tenants, and I want to talk about evictions, right? The beginning of the cycle of rentership and the end of the bad end, so to speak, or at the end of the bad end." And it was so interesting for me that we didn't plan it, but when we got to talk about evictions and problems and what happens when the tenant moves out, he kept referencing to the beginning of the conversation. He kept saying, "Remember when we talked about the application? Remember when we talked about the background? Remember this?" It was like almost everything that we did, he came back to the references to the beginning when we talked about, looking up, so, background checking and the credit checking a tenant, and that really reduces the chances of having a problem with the tenant. All those things are not a guarantee that we won't have problems, but it's all about reducing the chances of those things. And thank you for those of you who are contributing with comments and answering and participating. John, you are definitely getting 2 stars so far for your participation tonight. And let's see who gets more stars. And John, that will give you a gift at the end of the session. So thank you, John, for contributing. I really appreciate it, for you sharing some comments and feedback and answering. That's awesome. Okay. Moving forward, how do we make smart decisions about where to buy and what to buy? My experience, it showed me that a lot of people, as soon as they decide that they want to invest in real estate, the first thing they come around to, or very quickly come around to, is what a lot of people call the buy box. What's your buy box? What's your buy box, right? I don't know if you are been in a conversation that someone asked you about the buy box, or if not, and you're actively involved, it will come up very quickly. And what is the buy box? What price, what kind of property, bedrooms, bathroom, all those buy box. Okay. I get it. It's okay. Buy box is important. I'm not saying it's not, but in order to make smart decisions, right? My buy box is not the same as your property buy box. My buy box is a personality box. And when I say personality box, I rather you don't ask yourself, the budget, or there's a 4 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, if commercial or duplex, single family. I rather you ask yourself, hang on a second, what's my experience right now? I'm a beginner. I have some experience. Am I a control freak, or I'm okay to let others be involved, right? How busy am I right now in my life? Am I super busy and I barely have time to make a decision, or I have some time, right? All those things are going to come back into who you are as a personality and who you are as in your experience, availability, attention, etc. At the moment. That may change in the future, right? Maybe after you purchase 2 properties and 2 years have passed, and maybe something with your work setting has changed, then maybe you'll have more time. You'll maybe be more comfortable taking type of investment that fit your experience level of, that in 2 years instead of the experience level you have right now. So you see, all those questions are coming back to me. Who am I? What is my experience? How much time do I have? Can I be more on the passive active involvement scale? Can I be more on the active side, on the more passive side? Am I a outgoing personality and easily engaging, or am I more not really hard for me to pick up the phone and call someone? Those are really important questions, and I think you need to determine them first before you determine the buy box, because those personality box questions should dictate what's your buy box in many ways. So I'll give you an example. One of my very good friends, she is a very big real estate investor in Southern California, right? When we talk, we always have those conversations about real estate and investing. It's always like a kind of, like a philosophical or ideas and brainstorm. But she tells me, Danny, Your numbers are much better than mine in many ways. I can never ever buy out of state. I'm a control freak. I would never trust anyone. It has nothing to do with you or your teams. That's just my personality. I need to go touch the house. I need to go see the tenant. I need to do this. I need to do this. That's just my personality. I cannot entertain the idea of me buying remotely, sight unseen. Even if I travel and check, I just can't do that, right? She's used to it. That's her personality. She's very intelligent person, but also in many ways old school, right? I get it. I get it. Her buy box and on the type of properties that we buy is never gonna work out because she's not gonna go into those type of properties. By the way, probably every property she buys is 2 to 3 times more the down payment than what one property for us costs in total. But that's just who she is. So remember, when you think about those buy box, think about your personality box first, and then out of that, try to define your own buy box, the actual buy box. Now, I want to talk about the cash flow, right? Everybody's worried about the cash flow. Naturally, me too. So I just want to mention a couple of things about that. I really want to put it in perspective, and my screen is going a little bit wild. And I want to mention a couple of things. We have a tendency, and I'm talking when I say we, I actually hear it from people all the time. The tendency to either focus on appreciation or focus on cash flow, right? A lot of our clients, I even had a conversation with someone today that is a new client starting out, and he said, you know what? I don't care about the cash flow. I can even entertain a negative cash flow. I really want to focus on appreciation. And that's okay. That's up to him, whatever he feels comfortable. Some will say, I really can't depend on appreciation, but I want cash flow, right? So it can be challenging. My answer to you, or my suggestion for you, instead of thinking on the extreme, how about we live somewhere in the middle, right? What does it mean, somewhere in the middle? There is a middle ground here. We can still have a little bit of cash flow, challenging these days with the interest rate, which I will talk about next. So we can definitely think about still having cash flow, even a small one, and at the same time, bank on somewhat careful appreciation, right? So it doesn't have to be only this one or only this one. There is a middle ground. Yes, there is a middle ground. Not everywhere, right? I'm not going to be able to buy a property in Southern California or Northern California, with a reasonable down payment, not cash, and have the same situation. Just not going to happen. But there's definitely other parts of the country that we can find that kind of a middle ground between those two and not live on the extreme. So we don't have to be in the extreme. Think about those things to find that somewhat of a middle ground. Both of those items, appreciation and cash flow, will contribute, obviously, to your success or to your successful investment. The second thing that we are talking about, or I hear a lot, including today, is the following sentence: I'm not buying because the interest rate is so high. And for that, I want to ask you, what does it mean for you, high interest rate, right? Because maybe you are, and please don't be offended, just got very spoiled, and your expectations or realism is just unattached, because a lot of us here have had the opportunity, amazing opportunity, to obtain low interest rate, either buying or refinancing our primary residence or buying rental properties throughout the COVID era, right? So COVID era had its own, level of interest rate, which is just abnormal, right? The 2.5, 3.5, even 4%. It is not common. It is not normal. So if we are having this conversation intelligently and we are thinking about the interest rate, we have to compare. When someone tells me interest rate is high, my question is, compared to what? If you're comparing today 6.5 for real estate, investors, 6.5 to zero, whew, you're right. It's crazy high. It's 6.5% more than zero. Unbelievable, right? I'm making a joke, obviously. Nobody gets zero, right? So what is reasonable? 2.5, let's just say 3.5. Well, 3.5, it's not really a real interest rate. Yes, we got lucky. We had it for a little moment, and that is terrific. But that's not what usually happens. Usually, five, 5.5, right? Let's just say 5.5. So if I am, if in normal time, realistically, call it 5, then I am relatively high, 1.5% high compared to 5. I agree. It's high, but it's not crazy high. It's not unmanageable. It's just high. And also, I want to ask you, what are you buying? Because if you're buying $1 million home, every bit, in the interest rate translate to a lot of dollars, right? So $1 million home or 800,000, $750,000 mortgage, every little increase in the interest rate translate to a lot of dollars, and that is can be very, very impactful on the cash flow, on everything. But if you're buying a $300,000 home and the mortgage is 250, 240, you know, that difference of 1.5% is maybe 150, $200 a month, give or take. I'm not saying it's nothing. I'm just saying put it in perspective, right? What if I tell you that right now there is a chance you can buy a house that, because we are in the end of the year and things are a little bit slow, maybe there's a way for you to pick up a property for $20,000 below market value, assuming there's no work needs to be done, right? Just a good property, but you can buy it for $20,000 below market value, appraised value, okay? $20,000. Is it worth? And maybe that $20,000 is not going to be there once the interest rate start coming down, and maybe in the spring of 2025, more buyers are coming back to the market, and all of a sudden that $20,000 is no longer available for us. So $20,000 versus a difference of what, $2,000 a year. Come on, what is more worthwhile, right? It's every market trends have we can find the right opportunities. But if we are just saying a statement, oh, interest rate is high, then I think it's just not looking down to the real things and kind of connecting it to reality. Real interest rate is really high relatively to what? 5%. All of a sudden, I'm sure many of you will say, you know what, 1.5%, I can manage that. Or is it very high relatively to what you got in COVID? I get it, but that's not real. So just try to bring that philosophical statement to reality, right? To what's happening right now. Maybe because it's a little bit high, it creates a little bit interesting opportunity to buy, with a discount, right? For example, maybe actually it does, but just to give you some thoughts. So don't get fixated on the interest rate. Get fixated on investing, in the sense like every market, there are opportunities. Part of what we do, and I tell my agents, listen, we create the opportunity. We can identify the house and say, that house, if I can buy it for this price, or I can do it, the one thing I can do this, I am actually generating an opportunity that may not be the same thing if just a homeowner looks at that house and wants to buy it, right? So us are the ones who are creating those opportunities. And I'm not, of course, I want a lower rate, right? I no doubt about it, but I just want you to really put it in perspective and in real life situation, right? And not just use a blank kind of a statement with that. I'm not going to spend a lot about what I call the hockey stick of real estate. I do want to mention that in real estate could behave a little bit like a startup hockey stick situation. And usually it happens like this. So the hockey stick of startups, if you don't know, it usually startups are starting very, very slow in income or profit or income. And at some point, something happens, and all of a sudden they make that hockey stick on the graph, and their income or profit really start to go up exponentially. That's the hockey stick, kind of graph. Real estate doesn't really behave this way, or maybe it does, just much slower. So there is a time in real estate that things behave a little bit like a hockey stick situation. How does it look like? It looks like usually like this. I bought a rental property 5 to 7 years ago. I did nothing special, but the market did its own thing. And about, let's just say 6 years later, I've accumulated a significant equity by appreciation in that property, right? Significant enough for me to maybe consider selling that property, doing a 1031 exchange, and buying two other properties without, without bringing more money into the table from my own pocket, right? So I'm transferring one property that I bought with some equity into two others, right? When I do that, it sounds exciting when I have one house and maybe 5 years or 6 years later, I can do that, move with the 1031 exchange. And now I have two houses for the same amount of money that I bought the first one. That is great. How about I have bought two houses and waited the same period of time, and then let's just say 6 years later, and no guarantee, it can be 7, it can be 8, it can be even 4, but the same thing happened, and now those two houses are being sold, and now I have four houses. That sounds a little bit more interesting, right? The whole point is it's doable. I have investors that are now working with us on selling the house they bought with us a few years ago and buying sometimes not just two, even three other houses, right? From the same one that they bought 7 years ago or more, in other markets. So that is something that we see a lot. It's what I call the hockey stick graph of real estate. It just operates a little slower, right? In startups, they want to see it within maybe 2 years. In real estate, it's probably not going to happen before 5, right? So that hockey stick moment is there. We just have to be more patient. And as we come towards the end, I want to kind of point one thing that I really think is super important for people, for investors, and it's just not being utilized enough. A lot of the times when I talk to investors, I see that we take things at face value, right? They tell us one thing, someone, and we just listen and we just, okay, done, or agree or don't agree or whatever. I think one of the best tools we can have in life, all of us, is to know how to ask questions or to know to ask questions, because every time we do that, it drives the discussion, the conversation, the understanding, the solution of a problem further down the road or advances it, right? And I'll give you an example. When I used to, years back, when I started, after the crash of 2008, I decided that I really need to do things differently and more detailed and more different aspect of the business. I decided that I'm rebuilding my business in many ways. And one of the things was, okay, here's a new property manager or a realtor that I want to bring on board. I don't know them, right? I need to make sure that I'm bringing the right people on board, right? As much as I can. So what I started doing is, as a preparation for the first meeting, I would list down all the questions that I want to ask them. And many times I would just open, a notepad or on ePad, whatever, and just over time put the questions in. Just write questions to myself. I'm just gathering questions as a preparation for the call. And then before the call, I take all the questions, I review them so it's fresh in my mind. I make sure it makes sense. I make sure it's phrased correctly. I sometimes eliminate duplicate because I wrote the same question twice. And then I kind of decide which one should I go and ask first and which one second and third. And I'm just prepping it, right? I'm not going to be fixating on this, but I'm really want to have a lot of questions or enough questions, and maybe sometimes even similar questions, but not in the same order. And that's how I go into the conversation. And that's how I start doing vetting and so on. And I slowly I taught myself that I think I was always good about asking questions, but I felt that I need to take it to the next level. And what I mean is, we all have that ability to ask questions, and it's important that we don't underestimate the importance. Because I'll give you another example. When I speak to an attorney for the first time about some legal situation or a contract that I want them to review, I'm sending them the information that I'm looking for with my questions, right? So when we jump on the call, I know they're always short on time. I am already advancing the conversation because I tell them, hey, look at paragraph 6, and what about this? What if this happened, and so on. And I'm still gonna have a general conversation with them. But when we get to speak, the starting point of our conversation is more progress, is more advanced. I'm not just sitting there like, so okay, okay. That's not good. That's not advancing me. Forget about the attorney. I don't need to advance the attorney. How about advancing myself, right? So when I do that, I prepare, I go on, I ask a lot of questions or many questions or as much as I can think of. The conversation is really moving forward and advancing me towards my goal or towards what I'm trying to accomplish or find out, etc. I think you should consider doing something similar if you're not doing it already, right? I think today it's even easier. You just go on chat and say, hey, what kind of questions do I need to ask here? But do that too. Doesn't matter. That will help advance your knowledge, understanding of a situation, of a problem, of anything, right? So I think that if you're not doing that already, find a way. I'm using a notepad. You use something else so you can jump on those calls and advance the conversation. By the way, even if you should decide to speak with me, I would want you to do that, right? I would want you to be ready with the conversation. And I love it when I meet with you with new potential clients. They have a list of questions and they're like, listen, it's always start with an apology. And I'm like, yeah, you're kidding me? I love it. Bring your question. That is for me, meaning we're going to have a progress and advanced conversation with your questions, because it's better that you bring it and I answer your question than I'm just talking about who we are and what we do, which I don't have a problem doing. I just want to really advance the conversation. All right, guys, as we wrap up and get to our Q&C, questions and conversation, right? Questions and conversation. And we can talk about different things, real estate related, of course, but it can be directly related to tonight and others. First of all, I want to give you a little gift. And the gift is my ebook, talks about really simplify aspect of real estate investing, and I added a whole chapter on fourplexes and why people don't really why people tend to underestimate the whole concept of fourplexes, which leads them into issues and problems and results in agonizing and stress. There's some clarification there. I just added it not too long ago. So you have the ebook. You have the list of, I think, about 90 different resources, websites, some probably known, others, many not known, to advance your knowledge, your tools, etc. I've been gathering, collecting those links for different tools and websites for a very long time, for many years. And lastly, a curated list of videos that we put together from the ones that I've put together. It's my videos. We really pick the 3, 4, 5 that are the top one. We talk about LLCs and with strategies, etc. Right? All this is a gift for you. You just go to simplydoit.net /simply do it gifts with an S, multiple plural gifts, and you don't need to buy. There is, if someone asks, there is a fee for it, but you can, have a workaround, because if you use the code simply do it 10, that will be for free. So you don't need to buy it unless you really want to pay. Someone here really wants to pay for something. I can definitely be okay with that. That being said, let's just see. Here's my contact information. I see the first question coming in, and by all means, I'll be happy to get your questions now. Let me see what the first one. You are also welcome to unmute yourself. Okay, I'm losing my voice here. Which is your main English podcast that I can subscribe to? I looked up on Apple. Okay. All right. Let's do some links here. If you Google simply do it guided real estate investing, simply do it guided real estate investing on Google, you'll be able to sorry, you'll be able to find our podcast, um, or go to anchor.fm/simply do it. So either one should result in the podcast, right? I'll do one better tomorrow. I'll send a link to all those things, right? The Facebook page, everything you're seeing here, so you don't have to guess and we don't have to um, worry about links. By the way, while questions, and John, you are definitely the star tonight for questions, so you definitely get the book and and the list and the curated videos for free, just for being an awesome participant. While more questions are coming in, I do want to say that if you would like to meet with me in person, one-on-one, virtually, in person, if you're in Orange County, or over the phone, no problem. We do it day in, day out. It's usually 30 to 45 minutes conversation. Usually in those conversations, we call it a welcome session, opportunity to ask questions, address concerns, run your specific situation scenario, if you're interested to run it by me, or just have a general conversation with me. Really, whatever you wanna do during that conversation. Usually, I see that as an opportunity to see if what you're trying to accomplish, investment wise, we can help you. You can help you. The main goal is to see if there's a good fit. There's no sales pitch. There's no come to our come to our boot camp or something like that. Truly, let's have a conversation, a more intimate, your situation, something that you may have in your life that you're concerned about, that you want to check. We'll have 30, 45 minutes, and then we can decide if this is a good fit and we are a good solution for what you're trying to accomplish real estate wise. I want to thank you also for sticking with me, with us tonight, for this information. I'm going to wait another minute or so to see if there's any question. I'm just going to assume that if there are no questions, it's either because the
Hey,
trainer
Danny,
was really
Yankee, I
good.
definitely have
Yes,
a lot of
please.
questions. I definitely have a lot of
Absolutely.
questions. I think that thank you very much for the workshop. I think it's just very interesting that I'm afraid to interrupt you. So I think this is a great opportunity for me to ask questions. If you don't mind, I have several.
Yes.
First of all, my name is Yankee. I come from Florida, and I'm a beginner of real estate investors.
Okay.
Having said that, let me begin with my questions. Starting from the first question on the second topic that you have, minimizing the vacancy duration. So when you have a tenant, what is the good time that you ask them to give you a advance notice when they about to leave, like 2 months, 1 month? What is
Okay.
standard? What should I ask them in the maybe the contract I listed over there?
So contractually, usually what I see is anywhere from 30 to 60 days notice, right? Many times it's dictated by the state what is supposed to be, because some states are more strict about it, some are less. So the first, contractually, it could be 30, it could be 60 in most cases from what I've seen. That being said, I my approach, what I call extreme ownership, that's kind of how I see it, is actually to tell you to handle it a little bit differently. Do not wait for them. Why do you need to wait for the tenant to tell you? For me, I start the process, and this is how I teach all the people I work with, especially the ones who self-manage. 90 days before lease ends is when I start the conversation, evaluating what to do. I'm not talking to them yet, because sometimes I first want to take the time to check what's going on with the market in terms of rents. Maybe I am thinking about selling or entertaining the idea about selling. I have time to now explore that option, right? I'm not even selling. I'm just, first is me. What are my plans? Do I think I'm going to do something different with the house? Do I want maybe to not even resume renewing the list to a bad tenant, so to speak, right? That's where 90 days before, I am just doing all that prep work. Around 60 days is when I tend to start reaching out once I know what I want to do and communicate it to the tenants. I just always feel that I want to be respectful, even if I don't like them, right? Just because those are people, in order to understand what their plans are, right? So right now, I'm not waiting for them to let me know. I am I am navigating my own property. Hello, it's me. In 60 days, your lease is over. What are your plans, right? And they will respond, we plan to not renew, and you know what's going on. And then you act on what you need to do in order to get to the point where renewing it, prepping it, cleaning it, etc. Or maybe they're going to say, we want to renew, and then when they tell you we want to renew, you say, hey guys, you're paying $1,500 a month and you've been there for 2 years without any single raise. Guess what? The market is paying 1850. However, since you are such good tenants, I'm only going to raise it on you from 1500 to 1650 and not 1850. Something along those lines, right? You can phrase it in different ways. But the whole point that I'm trying to make most of anything, extreme ownership. You need to take charge of your property and not reactive and not wait for them. If you're going to wait for them, maybe they're only going to wake up, hey, it's 21 days and we want to stay, and by law you have to give them 60 days advance, you're increasing the rent or something like that, right? Every state has those little regulations, and if you wait for them and maybe it's too late, all of a sudden you're stuck in a little bit of a bind or unpleasant or rush things. This way, 90 days before, you have plenty of time to review what the market rent is, what your plans are, etc. You can take it easy and not rush, and be ready for that conversation with them. And you control the conversation, right? You don't wait for them. In my opinion, don't wait for them. They may not even listen. I have been in a situation as a tenant. I didn't say anything when I rented. I didn't say anything. And one of those years, the owner didn't say anything either. So we just, I don't care. She didn't want to raise the rent. Oh, I don't have a problem with it. So that's the way. That makes sense. My answer around that
Yeah,
point. It's a good
yeah,
point.
that's very good. Well, thank you, thank you.
Sure.
My next question going to preventing the issue with problematic tenants over there. I have two questions here. One is the credit check that you mentioned. What kind of credit score that you think that would be a decent like a bottom line that I consider giving that the house to lend it to him. Is there a bottom line of the credit, the threshold of the
I
credit
want
score?
to say that probably around 580-ish is where I would start getting a little bit nervous, in generally speaking. Now, this is a very unfair question, because if you are an investor who operates in an area where 580 is really high for those tenants, then this is an irrelevant answer, right? Maybe you're operating, I don't know, in an area that everybody has really bad credit, and you're going to be sitting and say, hey, this guy from California said that 580, and that never comes, right? So you really have to have that answer relatively to what the segment of the market you're in. Maybe you're in an area that a lot of people will have well over 620 and above. So why would you take someone to 580? So that number really has to be attached to your segment of the market more than anything else, and then you can look at that number more correctly, instead of just looking for the exact figure. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think that beside the segmentation, where it is, I think also the age also could be important. Like a lot of time those young professional, they really didn't care the credit score, or they didn't even know until they learn the lesson that, oh, okay, they have problem getting renting the house, getting the loan, then they will, try to fix it as they learn the lesson as they go on. So
Right.
I
And,
guess
and, I, and if I may, I want to add something else related to it. Um, we can sit, be here and debate and discuss and have a conversation about it, which is great, right? But it's all about, my philosophy has always been, I call it practical a discussion, right? Or practical decision, because we can have a debate. Now you go back tomorrow and say, what does this conversation help me? I have a house that's been vacant for 3 months. So the next guy that comes in with 600, or I want 620, and the next guy that comes in with 580, everything is fine except the 580, and I'm a little bit desperate, I'm going to take him, right? Or I'll find a way how to work with that person. Or what else comes with the 580? It's been like 580 in terrible past history, or just 580 because there was a situation in his life and we can mitigate it by 1.5 or 2 times the security deposit, for example. So we have to bring it back to the actual situation, because if you're going to end up with a decision and then that will lead for long vacancy, something is maybe wrong with what's happening. The rent is too high, your requirements are not fitting the market, or something like that. Okay, so we can have ideas, but then we have to connect it to reality.
Okay. Suppose you did a very good job on, checking those the backgrounds and everything that you do. But what if in a scenario where there's a recession or people lost job, what should I do as a landlord?
So can you repeat the question? What should you do if you did everything correctly, but there's still a problem?
Right, but what if the tenant lost job because economic downturn or some other reason? Then how do you mitigate that?
So you're saying I have a tenant, they lost their job and now they're in the house and they can't pay rent?
Right.
Okay. So I have had different situation over the years that, as a result, taught me how to be an owner, right? I can tell you that every time that I was very easy or sympathetic, or um, um, you know, uh, um, not really enforcing the contract, that taught me a very good financial lesson, right? So I always say that my tenants toughened me up over the years, okay? Just because when I did the right thing as a human being, I got screwed. Let's just put it this way, okay? Sorry, but that's just my reality. Now, it's not always been the case. So first of all, if someone lost their job, generally speaking, and they can't pay, please, I really feel bad. That means you signed an agreement, a contract for 12 months. It's 6 months in, you lost your job. You know what? How about you just move without any hiccup, so we don't have to go in eviction and do that? I'll give you, sorry, sympathetic. You didn't pay for November. Okay. And let's go our separate ways, even though they're breaching contract, right? Because they're moving mid-contract. But you understand that it's maybe better to have the house in your possession without any hiccups versus going through the ordeal of an eviction. Even if it's in Florida, still it can take time, holidays, expenses, etc. So that would be my general approach, is try to resolve it in the best possible way that they are moving out. If they do not move out and I have to go to an eviction, then I will always try to do it in the following way. One thing, I will communicate to them what's happening. Mr. Tenant, there is a contract in place. I have to obey by the contract and start an eviction process. That being said, if you want to work things out while we are in the process of eviction, I'll be very happy to stop the eviction and work things out with you, so we can see how it can be resolved, and you avoiding the fact that you have an eviction on your record, because that will impact you in the future, right? So I'm kind of splitting myself into two paths, right? And I'm working on both. I have to do the eviction and I'm telling them, so I'm not surprising them. I'm like, hey, I'm on your side in a way. I'm going to work with you, but I have to do this as well. So you tell me how you want to do that, right? It's when usually people get surprised by an eviction without knowing, that they get frustrated or upset or all of that. But when you're telling them what's coming, and you're in, you're doing everything in your power to not make it, surprising, or then and on the contrary, you're trying to help them, you're able to maintain that conversation with them. By the way, I may I ask in which area of Florida you live in or invest in?
Tampa,
Hmm?
Tampa.
Tampa. Great. I had a condo. I no longer have that in Clearwater, just off the Highway 19. Is it 19, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
familiar with Clearwater, around the
not
19?
really. I'm on the east of Tampa. Clearwater is the west of Tampa. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know the area well. Waterfront condo, gated community, beautiful. This guy comes in with his girlfriend and the girlfriend's daughter. Everything is fine. They rent, no problems. Few months in, they separate. He's by himself, and for whatever reason, he has a job. He cannot pay the rent. Guess what he does? Stop paying the rent. This guy, I told him, listen, you have to pay, or I start an eviction. Don't mess with me. I'm a private investigator. I'll mess you up. Something like this. He didn't threaten me, but he hinted, right? That don't mess with me. I said, fine. I start the eviction. We put a notice. We go to court. Someone on my behalf goes to court. We get the writ. I call the sheriff. The sheriff, I schedule a time with sheriff to come there. I'm not. By the way, I'm not there. Everything is done over the phone. I call the locksmith. The locksmith knows the community. Says, can you ask the sheriff to wait for me outside the gated community, because the guard is not going to let me in. Hang on, no problem. They go in, evict, do the eviction, I take possession, and the guy is traveling, right? He texts me or calls me because the neighbor told him, what have you done? What have you done? I'm like, listen, I know you're a nice person, because he was nice all the time that we were that he was, when everything was fine, he was a nice person, no problem. I said, first of all your belongings are inside the condo, and by law, I need to put them out to the curb. But I know you're traveling, so I am being respectful, because if I put it out to the curb, you know exactly what's going to happen, right? The curve will take everything. And I said, by the way, I'm just want to be respectful for you. So I haven't done that, but if you keep fighting with me, I'll have to do that. Then the second thing I tell him, and then he says, listen, I really want to stay in. I want to make it work out. I said, here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay me the rent you own. You're going to pay me the all the costs that I incurred with the sheriff eviction, all of that. You're going to increase your security deposit, because I don't trust you anymore. And you have to do it in 3 days, because in 3 days I am obligated to put your things to the curb. And if you're unable, I told him on the spot, no problem. I know what I am allowed to do by law and what I need to do next, but here's what's going to happen. And the guy was like, please don't do it. Please don't do it. I'm taking care of it. Give me a day or two. I need to get paid, and da 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 da. And within 3 days, all that amount was back in my account, paid fully, and he stayed. Now I know he wasn't a bad guy. He was truly trying to exploit the situation, leveraging the fact that I'm out of state and he's a private investigator. Done. Never had a problem with him, right? He was it was more like who's the stronger one. So that was one example when I worked with him very respectfully, and he stayed. I do have another tenant in Orlando who, she lost her job during COVID.
Maybe the situation might be different between Florida and New York, though, right? In New York, probably it will be tougher that, you see a lot of people, get over more than 6 months that they don't pay, and then you have to go for
Is
it.
your tenant in New York?
No, I'm just saying. No, my tenant is in Florida.
I have to tell you a little secret. I don't buy in places where I know the laws are favoring the tenants and not the landlords. So New York, why? You know why? Exactly for that. So I buy in Florida, I buy in Texas, in other states where the laws are more towards the owner and not the tenant for this reason. So when we have a problem, I have more power in my hand than getting a tenant out in New York or New Jersey or all of those areas. It's not by coincidence. It's well by design.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, thank you. Going down to the next question on the section, making the informed property choices. And you have a two boxes, the buy box and personality box. So I guess most of us are risk averse. So my question would be, which type of property would have a lower risk? Given that you might have, one bedroom, two bedroom, condo, single house, or multiple house, which type of property that might be more demanding, resulting in, the risks will be slower, or you have some other, opinion, which type of property that,
Okay.
investors should go in for risk adverse perspective.
So I'm gonna first of all say there is no right and wrong. There is right and wrong for you in that respect, or me. Okay, I will answer it, but I just want to say my answer may come across to one person like I'm completely wrong, and one person would completely agree, and it's the same answer. And I'll give you my rule of thumb. When investors invest, many times they don't put any calculation or ROI calculation on what I call the EROI, emotional ROI. The emotional ROI is not going to go in the Excel. The emotional ROI is how much time you need to spend dealing with problems, right? The noise in the system. Like every property will have noise in the system, right? It could be from repairs, maintenance, a vacancy, or vacancy, property management issue, etc. This is not, you want no noise, go buy stock, right? Properties has friction, issues, problems, people, etc. That's just inherently part of owning real estate. The challenging part, and this is where you probably need just a little bit of common sense, not even a lot, is to ask yourself, before I run the numbers, right? Or before I see the quality value of a property, the opportunity, how much issues, problems, etc. am I going to potentially have from this one? And I'll give you an example. If you are going to flip properties, buy, renovate, sell, flipping properties, and part of that middle step here is renovation, dealing with contractors and permits and all that fun stuff. That is a lot of noise. That's a business. That's not even in a way, it's not investing, it's a business, right? It's an operational business. So if you are thinking of, I want peace of mind or the emotional ROI, this is not going to be good return, because you're going to be heavily involved one way or another, because there's aspect of operation, of renovation. So as an example, if you're going to buy, what many times investors are attracted to, the cheaper properties. Many times the cheaper property in an area, say even Clearwater, would be cheaper property, older property, in not so good area, attracting certain kind of renters. And here's what's going to happen. That property may have more tenant turns, more problems with tenant paying. Because it's older, it may be more have maintenance. And by the way, when you have an older property with a maintenance issue, anytime you need to repair something, it costs more, because the plumber will come in and say, your water heater is not up to code. I need to replace it, plus bring it up to code with the security step and the elevation and the expansion tank, and all of a sudden an $850 expense, it's actually 1,500. When you do the roof, same thing, right? So that's the challenge. So when you are attracted to the ones that appear on paper very good on cash flow and amazing, you may not necessarily be in that real life situation because of all those problems, right? This is not guaranteed it will go this way, but it is more likely to go this way. So that means more hustle, more trouble. And then you're going to say, wait, what's going on here? How is it possible that I On Facebook, I see everybody's buying houses and renting with no problems, but I'm having issues all the time, right? Because nobody reports them on Facebook. So I call that type of property more noisy, or more noise in the system, and more emotional involvement on your behalf. On the other hand, the type of properties I like, right? Again, I like to buy are the upper middle class, the middle class. Newport Richie in your neck of the wood, Newport Richie, Lutz, Riverview, Wesley Chapel. Are you familiar with those
Yeah,
cities?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Although I've
Uh,
been in Florida not too long, like a year and a half, but I do
Yeah,
kind
this is your neck of the wood, the upper middle class, the middle class family with the 2 kids and a half, with the dog and the cat in a nice single family home, nice community, good schools, not amazing schools, good schools. For me, what I'm hearing now, boring, 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 right? Boring has a very high benefit. It means you have to deal less with the properties on an ongoing basis, right? So it's more of an background background, in your life investment, and not in the forefront. It's not noise free, it's not problem free, right? But it just means the chances of you having multiple issues, very frequent and big ones, it's probably very likely not to happen. So I am super attracted to boring real estate. I think that the more boring the real estate opportunity is, the more sexy I think it is, right? So when you say a lower end property that cash flow amazing in not so good part of town, but it's really inexpensive, I'm like, I get turned off. Or if you talk to me about student housing, I turn off. But if you tell me this this middle class family with a dog and a cat with 2 kids who only work for, she works at retail and he works for, I don't know, she's a teacher and he works for middle management, I'm like, yes. Kids, stability. Go to school, stability. Good job, stability. My life, less noise. I love that. I love that scenario. It's not what usually investors are attracted to. You really have to sometimes go through the cheaper property to really get what I'm saying.
I see. Got it. Yeah, I think that's really good. You mentioned cash flow several times, and cash flow intimidation. So, are we ignoring the good cash flow just because we are intimidated something? Or I think the question may be, what is the threshold of cash flow that could compensate your intimidation, or you go for the deal? I know that you mentioned there's sort of an equation that you have, for the rent, there's, many of the pillar or factor you mentioned earlier, but, just speaking of cash flow, Excel, what is the good cash flow? Is it negative or 10% or
So
positive? Positive, that would be good.
so I can't use cash flow as a percentage per se, because there's a couple factors you need to understand that are going to happen on a local on a very different locals, right? So many times people are looking for the percentage, which is great. 10% cash flow is great, but if first of all, be careful of measuring what the rent is compared to the value of the purchase price. Many people, have you ever heard of the 1% rule?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you using it?
I try, but I don't think I get to the 1%. Some people
Okay.
mention even 2%. It's too
The-
good to be true.
so the
Okay?
1% rule, I ditched that idea more than 10 years ago. It's a
Mm,
completely misleading, because
right.
you can have a property in Tampa for 300,000, let's just say, and the cash flow would be $100. Sorry, property in Tampa for 300,000, let's just say rent for 2,000, and the cash flow is $100, and you can have a $300,000 property in Birmingham, Alabama, rent for $1,800 and generating $200 in cash flow. Less rent, more cash flow. Why? You are in an area, Tampa, that you have a bit of a challenge with the property taxes are being a bit higher and the insurance rates are being a bit higher. I'm saying a bit compared to Texas, they're a bit higher. Sorry, they're cheap. Compared to Alabama, they're they're very high, right? Just as an example. So you have to. It's really important not to use, in my opinion, that 1% rule, but really dive into the details of the expenses, fully analyzing the property. That's one. Second, you may have a little bit of an advantage, right? When I analyze properties, and we do it all the time, a lot, right? Financially, and we have our financial model, a template that we use. I call it the business plan for the property. When we do that, I have to factor in a leasing fee and a management fee. If you're buying in Tampa and you plan to lease it yourself and or manage yourself, you just saved, let's just say, about $200 a month on average, maybe even 250, right? I don't know, but if you're doing that, you have to factor that in. It's actually benefit for you. Now on a $300,000 home with the current interest rate, right? The current, I know, the current interest rates. If I were you in Tampa, I would expect to cash flow about $300, give or take, maybe even 400. If I'm, assuming I'm doing it myself, not using a property manager and listing agent, but doing it myself. If I'm doing it myself, about half of it. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think if I invested like you 20 years ago, definitely like 1% probably work for you. But I think that if I started right now, I think that even $300 or 400, I think it's not that easy to achieve.
Not in your neck of the wood, but also depends on how much what's your down payment. You're putting 20, 25, 30. What's your down payment?
I was told to put 25. That is a better rate.
Okay, so my sweet spot today, it's 30, not 25, which I know a lot of people, we used to do for almost probably until 2022. That was the golden, our 25 was the golden rule, the golden usage. We switched to 30 past 2 years just because we get a little bit of a break on the interest rate. So, and then 30 years or 15?
I did 30 years. I
Okay.
spoke to the lender that, I could do 25, 20 or
You
30.
can.
They said 25 was fine. So I did.
Just because you can, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
Mm.
You can even do 20. Doesn't mean it's the right thing to do for you.
Right, right. No, I trust they are professional. So I did 25. So they said the 31, the 30 is similar. So we go with 25. But having said that, yeah, I thank you very much for all the answers. And although I still have a whole bunch of questions, but I don't want to take your time or
Okay.
other
I
people
appreciate that. Thank you
to
for all the
ask you
questions. And I actually want to circle back for the other ones here. Thank you
yeah.
very much for you definitely get 4 stars review from the presenters for all your questions. Good job. I do want to take another question that was put here before you started, and also before that, read a comment, which is just making my day. So we have someone by the name of A. I don't know the full name, but thank you for your comment, which says, all you need is Dani to balance the emotional investment. Very comforting to hear how you have problems and overcome them. Really appreciate that comment coming for you, Mr. A. Feel free to share your name. Oh, okay. Now I know who it is. Thank you very much. Much, much, much appreciated. You made my day just getting that. Thank you. The question that came before, John, thank you. The runner-up for the stars review is, can you give a more review of your out-of-state ventures? Okay, so John, I'll give that review. I hope if I'm missing the mark from your end, let me know, and I'll kind of realign towards what you meant. But generally speaking, I'm just gonna keep it kind of generally speaking. We focus on out of states, meaning different states, long-term rentals. We typically buy single-family homes, duplexes, fourplexes, so the residential, in the type of communities and areas we just had a conversation on: upper middle class, middle class, lower middle class. Every market that we go to goes through a very rigid research to make sure it's a resilient market, right? I use the resilient factor because someone who came out of the crash of 2008, I've seen what happened to markets around the country. I was not watching the storm. I was in the eye of the storm with many properties, firsthand in mind, and my investors. And I just learned what happens when you are in a non-resilient market. There is not a specific indicator or index how to measure resilient. And therefore, I had to come up with my own. What is my own? I like to see what with the metro, with the size of the population, and wanting to be only what I call it a million people population and up, except one, all our metros that we are in are actually 2.5, 3 million people population and up. So population size of the metro is indicating on the resilient of the metro. And the resilient metro means that it has higher good chances to weather or not be as impacted when the next financial storm comes, right? I'm always planning for the people are always afraid of the next crash, so to speak, or downturn. I'm the only one who's probably not afraid of it. And the reason I'm not afraid is because I am expecting it, I am anticipating it, I am planning for it, right? So I don't, hunker down and do nothing and get paralyzed. I'm like, okay, it's coming sometime. Let's plan for it, right? And how do I plan? I value the market in terms of resilience. So we talked about size. I want to see multiple big employers, ideally representing multiple industries, right? You are in a great market. Tampa follows all those things very well. So it's a great size, multiple employers, big employers, multiple industries. That's also very, very important. I want to be in an area that is on the receiving end of my in-country migration patterns. Florida is on the receiving end. Texas is on the receiving end. New York is on the sending, right? Is not increasing in population, is actually decreasing in population. Parts of Ohio, Midwest, Northeast are shrinking, not dramatically, but there is a pattern of shrinkness, and most people are going to the South and the Southwest and some to the west, right? So I want to be where the population is going. So not being in an area that is decreasing or shrinking, but actually growing, okay? Growing means future buyers, future renters, and demand that comes with it. So we talked about population, industries, jobs, job growth, population growth, migration patterns. Those are really important. And then there's one other, I mentioned earlier, states that are landlord friendly, okay? States that are landlord friendly, usually Republican states are landlord friendly, Democratic states are tenant friendly, right? Blue states, red states. The last, I call it an important secondary, is I like to be in metros around the country that do not have harsh winters, right? Harsh winters. Why? Is because when you have a harsh winter, there is a very good chance that one of the following things will happen. One, your house will be vacant during the winter, and it so happens that the furnace failed and now pipes are frozen, right? It happened to me. I did have, in harsh winters, it did happen, right? Does it have to happen? No, but there's just higher chances that will happen. Second thing, in harsh winters, it's much harder to lease or sell a house, period, right? When Mr. Jiang is trying to list his property in Tampa in the middle of January, nobody will complain about the weather. Actually, they'll probably say how nice the weather is. So you're not going to have that problem in Florida, for example. So staying away from harsh winters. I'm not saying no winter, just harsh winters. Those are the main factors that when I look for a metro is how I choose. Then we have to make sure the numbers work, meaning what the type of properties that we like, how much we can buy them for, how much we can rent them for, and how much cash flow they're going to generate, right? And if they make sense, then we are good with the metro. Now we start lining up experienced, reliable, trustworthy property management, local property management company, and we go through a very extensive vetting process to find the good ones. And we do a similar process with finding that agent that we are vetting and choosing to work with and training and monitoring. So we spend a lot of time educating, training, making sure our local teams are truly our local teams. They're independent operators, but they operate under our training, supervision, direction, guidance. We bring our knowledge of investing to those people. We say, hey, this is how we operate. We want you to look at properties like this. We want you to analyze properties like this. Here's what we like. Here's what we don't like, etc. So all our local teams are part of the Simply Do It network. They go through training and supervising and guidance, and they don't do their own thing. This is not the Wild West. They have to adhere to our guidelines. Otherwise, they're out, right? And we bring them a lot of work. So when we bring them a lot of work, those agents are willing to work with our guidelines. By the way, our guidelines, they're not crooked. They're not crazy. They're just refinement on decision, on the process, on marketing, on analyzing, etc. It's very similar, in a very similar way with the property manager. So that's how we choose a market, choose teams, train them, and start finding properties with them for the benefit of our clientele, our investors, you guys, some of you guys, and so on. So that's how generally we go about it. We help our clients to make decision where to buy, how to buy, yes financing, no financing, what kind of financing. We have lenders that they can use, you don't have to. And then we help them, sift through the properties that we find and help them identify the one or two properties that are most suitable for their personality box, right? Personality box and buy box, not just one or the other. And then go all through the steps of making offers, negotiating, going under contract and everything that follows after the contract, from inspection to appraisal to everything else, all the way to closing. And at closing, we do not tell our clients, bye-bye, good luck, see you around. We stay and support our clients after they purchase at no additional cost. So when things come up, and they will come up, I promise, we want to be there and help, right? Provide a simple answer about a situation where how to choose a tenant in a not so good credit score, or maybe the property manager came up and said something to them about the tenant, about the situation, they're not sure how to deal with it, to all the way to issues that the property manager is not responsive, and so on and so forth. And then we are staying there, helping, involved in all those years of ownership. Naturally, that continues to us helping, advising, deciding when they want to sell, should they sell, how to maximize the sale, so we can help them sell, maybe even do a 1031 exchange if not they want, and buy the next one. So our approach is not just, here is a good market, good luck and see you around. Our approach, there is a life cycle of ownership. It starts well before we buy, and people need answers and guidance here, as even some of the questions that we had today. And it ends when you sell, and maybe even ends after you sell by moving on to other properties. So the extent of our support and guidance goes to things that can be related to your taxes, and things that related to owning more and buying the next one and moving forward and accelerating, and insurance and all that good stuff. So it's a really a comprehensive approach of, we have the buying power, we have a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot of goodwill too, and we want our clients to leverage that in their favor so they can maximize their investment and their success. We don't provide guarantees, right? There's no guarantee that there won't be issues. Actually, I can guarantee there will be issues, but we provide a lot of help, a lot of guidance. There at least one person still on the line that has a first experience of that. There are others that already dropped out, that they had first experience. So that's kind of, John, I appreciate you asking this question. of our, the review of our out-of-state venture. I hope I was able to illustrate and talk about detailed enough so you and anybody else can understand about it. Thank you, John, for that question. Yang, do you want to take another question and let's make it the last one?
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I have a couple more questions. Like for the materials, how do we receive all those material or ebook or even the presentation?
Did you register for tonight by email?
Yeah, I registered under a different email. Yeah.
So if you registered by an email that you can receive, then we will tomorrow probably wrap up everything from tonight and send it over by email. So you will have the recording, you will have the links to everything that I said, and you don't have to guess how to get them or start writing down, links.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I think you mentioned like, good market, bad market, you are prepared. What do you mean when you prepare for bad market, particular recessions?
So are you familiar with the 2008 crash?
I wasn't an investor by that time. I'm just
Uh,
new. Yeah.
Have you heard about the 2008 crash?
Of course, I'm a banker.
Were you have firsthand seeding to the crash during the 2008? So you know of it. You felt it one way or another?
Yeah.
Okay. Me too. And that scarred me emotionally, financially, truly. Okay. And I came out of the crash with many conclusions or understandings or ideas, thoughts, not how to not do real estate, but how to do real estate better. And in many ways, right? It's not just one thing. Um, so in a way, I kind of built my business from the ground up all over again because I felt that I need to do everything fresh start right after the crash of 2008. What I'm talking about is actually when I choose a market, how do I go about choosing a market? I had to come up with my methodology. When I vet a property management company, I have a list of 70 questions that I go on a call with a property manager, and I go through all that question. That's part of the vetting. I call it an interrogation, right? 70 questions. It's a 2-hour conversation, and I do it many times with many investors, property manager, and so on. And then how do I go about analyzing properties, right? I want to be part of that. All those ideas were, one of the core elements that I see them as the starting point, the foundation stone in a way is on average in the US, every 10 years, there's some sort of a financial downturn, right? Doesn't have to be crash. The crash was a big one. Before the crash, the 2001, right? Technically, COVID was right on the time for the second one after the crash because we haven't had a crash since 2000, in 8. Every 10 years should have been around 2018, 19. COVID came, kind of shuffled things, right? So I'm just saying, I'm just assuming a downturn, something will happen every 10 years or so. Hopefully, not that dramatic like the 2008 crash. So I want to be prepared for it, right? One person can come out of the 2008 crash and say that killed me. I'm moving on to only investing in stocks, right? Whatever. I came out saying I love real estate. I just want to do it better, and I want to plan. So I am assuming a downturn will happen, and I'm just telling myself if you try to choose wisely where to invest, what to buy, and how to go about analyzing it, the chances that you're going to be hard hit by the next downturn are just reduced, not zero, but reduced, right? Risk. So that's what I mean by trying to anticipate it and trying to make decisions because a lot of the decisions that came out of that, core point or core starting point are always get connected to it, right? It's coming. something may happen. What things can I do on my end to be ready for it, to minimize the impact of such a period on myself and my clients.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
Well,
Very good.
there's always saying, buy high low, sell low, right? And when I think, right now, I think, we are, the whole price is kind of a historical low, high, and affordability is very low with, high price and high interest rate. Is this still a good time to get into the market?
Do you know what usually people do after, based on what you just said?
I don't know.
They usually operate more like buy high and maybe sell low, or not sell, but buy high, right? So right now, December 2024, winter 2025 beginning, sorry, the winter 2024, we are seeing an era where interest rates are high, relatively high, a bit high, which are discouraging people from making major financial moves or decisions, such as buying houses, consumers, which after a really good run in real estate, that things went up. So we are seeing some of a, not necessarily downturn or correction, but slowing down a little bit. Some markets are even correcting down a bit. For me, that's an excellent opportunity to be a buyer and exploit or leverage the market condition in my favors. And I had a conversation with one of my agents in Dallas Fort Worth, exactly telling him, hey, we haven't done anything in Dallas Fort Worth for almost 2 years now. The market in Dallas Fort Worth is positioned differently now. Let's reevaluate what's going on and see if we can do anything, find anything interesting, right? So I think winter 2024, beginning of 2025, and as long as the interest rate will not go down, a lot, which, the Fed did indicate that there will be another rate reduction to be, before the year end, which is probably this month, maybe. What I anticipate is that spring of 2025, people will start coming back to buying after relatively a period of not buying. When more people are coming, it will be harder for us investors to buy. That is maybe 3-4 months away from now. You have a interesting window for the next 1 to 3, 4 months before possibly more buyers are coming back to the marketplace. By the way, application for mortgages are up. Just an indication. Application for mortgages are up. So that just shows you what's happening. Okay. So this is a sign. So if you are seeing the sign, you're like, okay, I can swoop in because we're still in the holidays and just in between the Thanksgiving and Christmas, and people are, whatever, and end the year and all of that. You know what? Perfect. When there's more uncertainty with consumers, the more certain you are, the more benefit you will make. So for me, right now, generally speaking, great time. I mean, right now, December, January, February, great time to be a buyer. Not that I will stop buying in April. I'm just saying even better than probably in few months, depending if you know where to buy. So not every market or not all markets are equal. So some markets are not, it's a very market by market, metro by metro kind of a decision, right? Some are great. Some are, I would probably be on hold a little bit just because they're still going through a major correction.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Perfect.
Can I still go on with question?
No, you know what? The only reason is I have a meeting in 15 minutes that I have to.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
That I
Thank
have
you so
to
much.
get ready, and so I wish I could. I know it's 2 hours now. I apologize just because I didn't expect to run all the way for 2 hours. No complaints. I love that part, but I have to get ready for my next my next thing on the calendar. It's more of a social thing on the calendar. So I thank you for the patience and the questions. You and anyone is listening, welcome to reach out if they want to talk in person about possibly working together. I want to thank those of you, John, John and A. Thank you for your questions and comment. I really appreciate it. Have a terrific rest of your night. By the way, Mr. Young, it's already 11 o'clock on your end. It's getting late also. So I
Well, again,
appreciate it.
yeah, it's a very interesting conversation and workshop. I really appreciate it. It got me excited, so that I'm not feeling sleepy. So
Sounds
thank
terrific.
you, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, everyone. Have a terrific weekend ahead. Bye bye. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, John. Thank you.